folks, I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily TA Wrap, where we take a look at these markets, and we do it each and every day. We're asking ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about tomorrow. I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains, and what may be another snowy night in the Rocky Mountains, I'm told. So today, what do? We continue what we started last week. In particular, on Friday, we had a big breakdown in the NASDAQ, in particular in biotech. That bleeding continued. It continued in a big way. You can see here on the numbers. It did not spread to the other indexes, and Dow Jones almost break even today, down 26 points was all. S&P's dropped 0.5%, 9 points, but that was pretty much off the lows, as we'll see in the charts. Composite down over 1%, 50 points lower, 42.26. The NDX was down almost 1%, 35.5 points, 36.17, and that was with Apple up on rumors of a coming deal with Comcast on streaming. And the Russell lost 1.3%, 15.5 points, 11.78. Gold was down about $26 today. Silver down again. Oil was just slightly down. Bonds jumped again today, and the dollar looks like it was down about 0.25%. So what's happening with these markets? It's pretty much a sideways range type trade taking place here on the Dow. And so the range trade that's in place here is that one at the highs, here with the Dow, and especially on the S&P 500. Volume was huge on Friday, so volume today, a little bit more than it has been, but it's just range trading. Dow doesn't do anything, doesn't give up anything, doesn't really gain anything, while the rest of the market had some trouble. If we flip over though to the S&P, which is the other listed issue, you can see here we're sitting at the range at the top, right? That top range, and I'm going to draw it about right here. I'll just draw in those last ones. There's kind of 2 ranges in this. There's kind of this top little range, and then there's a larger one underneath it. You could actually subdivide that if you wanted, make 3. It's holding inside that middle range still. Volume pretty good, right? It's still up there though. This is range trading. It hasn't done anything different, and until it does, it's just a range trade. So that trade is still the same as it has been. What isn't the same, and what continues to be pressured to the downside, is the NASDAQ. The composite breaks a swing point low tonight. That swing point low here, you go underneath it, right? Got a nice break underneath it. You didn't get 6 bars. If it had held another day, you would have had multiple swing points breaking, but you only got 5 bars here, so not enough to create another swing point. So you break one, another one's way down here. It's not that far away, but it's farther down. But you left a decent sized tail on it. Volume expands again, but not as much as Friday, the options expiration. But you get underneath that swing point with volume. That's going to be a confirmed sideways trend tomorrow. It's going to break to the sideways, and we'll have to see how it attacks the retest regen. You know how that drill works, and that is as you come back up here, if you come back within 6 bars, there's a good shot you'll make it to the top of that bar and test it and try to regenerate what way? Lower, right? Because it's a break to the downside. You have an ABCD structure in place. It's this one, and it has a little bit farther, or that's just about it. It actually just looks like it did it. Let's get the numbers on that. So that's 43.71, 42.42. So that's about 130 almost, and then off of this gives you about 42.14, and it got to 41.90. So it did finish. So you did an ABCD structure off the top, and you finished it all on the break of the swing point low, and then kind of bounced back up afterwards. So that's done. That says that we should probably see some sort of a sideways to bounce probably as a result of that. And if we look over the NDX, that one actually does suggest the same sort of a deal, that some sort of a bounce might be coming. This also was an ABCD down. This one did complete as well, or at least I believe it did. Let's get the numbers real quick. 37.38, and it's about $1.10. 36, yeah, about 36.05, and you got underneath it. So we completed both of them, ABCD structures on the downside. So, you know, given the fast move that it was, in other words, you did it in 2 bars on the way down, I would expect you try to come back up and try to do some sort of a push back to the top side. The IXIC will do that retest regen. Now, the Russell escaped the break on the downside, still range trading. And so like the S&P 500 and like the, we'll use this low as the S&P 500, the Dow, this one's still in a range trade. Now the volume today actually was not that heavy. If I look at that low, this low is got 367, you did 341 into it. So you actually had lighter volume coming into that swing point low. You hold, you bounce. That also suggests some sort of a bounce. So if you look at the Dow, S&Ps, Russell, they all range trading still, which suggests bounce. And then you go over and you see the NDX, IXIC, where the weakness has been on the way down. Even though they're pushing a lot of volume, they just finished up ABCD structures. That means they're probably going to bounce as well. And if we go to look at the sectors suggest the same thing. So I expect you're going to see some sort of a bounce to the upside tomorrow as a result of the way this traded today. If we go over to the sectors, I'll show you the two weakest ones first. The XLY, this is consumer discretionary. This one broke multiple swing point lows. That one's probably going to still be under pressure tomorrow. XLV, of course, has been the disaster zone with the biotech getting just taken to the cleaners. Huge volume expansion here as it comes down. But that one also has finished up an ABCD structure as well. Should try to bounce, do a retest, regen off that low. If we look over at that biotech, right, so this is the NASDAQ biotech, huge volume expansion as this one just blows out the lows. Breaks this low, right, doesn't break multiple swing points, but really gets acceleration to the downside. So many of these stocks were up huge amounts. I mean, if I pull this back and put it on a weekly, you can see the kind of escalation in price that has taken place here, and they just finally started giving it up. And, you know, it happens. Doesn't mean the world's coming to an end. It simply means that there is a correction taking place in some of the sectors. 3 swing point lows lined up here together. This thing's going to bounce, and when it bounces, I suspect it's going to regenerate again to the downside. That low is here. I'm assuming we'll get up there before 6 bars, so it could make it all the way to the top, but somewhere in this range, potentially coming in, somewhere in here, I expect it's probably going to bounce up into that area, or try to. If it can't get up that high, that just tells you how much weaker it actually is. In other words, if you can't get back into the bottom of the swing point low, you broke. And when it does, I expect it's going to try to break these 3 swing points. And if it does that, you're going to see a faster move than you even already saw to the downside, probably even more price escalation. And that probably would be what pushes the IXIC and the NDX even lower. The bounce that's coming tomorrow is a bounce. You have to recognize it as a bounce. Could it be another V-shape? Man, we've seen so many V-shapes, it may be. But you know, you just have to protect even when they're not, you know, even when they don't, even when they are V-shaping against you, you still have to protect against them. You don't really have a choice when you start seeing some major sectors break down. And it wasn't just the major sectors. You're seeing it in stocks like Netflix. Remember, Netflix broke a couple swing point lows. They were on the bad side of a Comcast, quote-unquote Comcast deal today. They did come down with some decent volume, but they came into a nice bar. These guys are going to bounce as well. You know, if you're looking for flip trades, these are the kinds of trades you look for. You trade down into the lows. This was a gap up low, you know, gap up off the low. You trade down into it. You don't have the volume. That low close was, the low was 37.77. You closed just over it. I would expect you'll see a bounce here tomorrow. If you look at Google did the same sort of thing. Google comes back, volume pretty decent, comes into the bottom of this big bar, right? Flips back around. It's going to probably go right back up here and at least test back into this area more than likely. And probably the top of this bar sort of thing. So 1186. So you trade down to 45 I think today, 1146 roughly. And yeah, it's a 40-point move. These are large moves. They're swinging wildly right now. I don't know if the move to the downside's over completely. Matter of fact, I suspect it isn't, given the damage in the index and the IXIC. And the other thing, and let me go back to that, I didn't point this out, is that if in fact it isn't over, tomorrow this is going to actualize as a swing point low. You're going to have a swing point low here, a swing point low there. They're almost in the same price zone. Right, so you're going to have one here, one there. You break those, you get a fast move down on this. You know the Russell will break as part of that if that happens. Then you've got all but the Dow, which nobody really cares about, right? I mean, it's not a predictive indicator right now. It hasn't been for a while. As a matter of fact, it kind of fell out of favor even in terms of my tracking way back when they changed it in September, October last year, and made it so much more like the financials. And that's why it held up so well today, as a matter of fact, because if you go look at the financials, lo and behold, the financials didn't want to give it up today, and the Dow's almost 33% financials at this point. So that's what's going on there. Let me see. So that was the bad sectors. The rest of them actually are range trading. I mean, I could flip through most of these. They all look the same, right? You had some volume coming off on the semiconductors, but here's the XLE, the IYT, the XLF I just showed you. XLK still actually as a sector doesn't look that bad. They're all kind of range trading. So I don't see huge damage in most sectors at this point, which also lends to the idea that we should probably bounce. Flipping over to the ox markets, gold. So gold trades down underneath the swing point low last week, breaks another one tonight. It's got another one down here below it. I suspect gold is going to try to trade down a little bit deeper, maybe another 20 points or so. Could go as low as another 40, come back in and retest, regen off this high. So gold itself, yeah, it's under pressure. 40 points brings you back to swing point high. I suspect it's going to get a bounce before that, probably off of this bar. It's a Feb 11th bar. It's 124.75. That's not that far away. Another, 15 bucks or so. So gold trading down. Silver hurt even worse in terms of the metals themselves. Actually, let me get silver. I'm so used to popping up XLV. Here's the silver market, big spike down, right? If you put it on a weekly, it kind of finished up an ABCD structure. This one's coming into this big bar finally. The top is 1908. You're trading at 1921. Probably bounces in there tomorrow, get some sort of a bounce off of it. But these sectors are they're not in trouble. They're just recoiling after huge runs. If you go over to the stocks themselves, I had told members a couple days ago, I think it was Thursday, that I took these short. You had 3 swing point breaks on the GDX. You don't get this very often, folks. When you get that kind of a thing, you just got to go short on it. And indeed, it's coming into the swing point high. That's where it will try to retest, regen higher. You're coming into it with a lot of volume, though. And so I would think it cuts into it fairly deeply, maybe gets to the bottom side of it. But these stocks, after a big run up, now they're kind of getting their heads handed to them. They're coming back down. Now, I'm not, as you know me, I'm a neoclassical guy. I got my own little thing going on. But you can certainly envision big, large head and shoulders, tops all over the place. I mean, here's one in gold. In the GDX stocks, you can see it You can see it almost all over the place. Now they have to actualize, and I think what's more important to me is what kind of support you're going to find down at these lower levels, and what do you see on the bounce, and you test back into levels that you broke down from. Those will be the keys. But because it's about supply and demand. It's about horizontal things. But that's what Head and Shoulders is, right? I mean, if you go back and you read Edwards and McGee, they talk about, and a lot of people don't use volume on Head and Shoulders, but on Edwards and McGee, if you go back to it, they talk about heavy volume on the left shoulder. They talk about lighter volume at the top, and then they talk about a lighter volume bounce when you bounce, right? You come off with volume, you bounce up here, and you don't have much volume. So heavy here, lighter, I should say, up there, even lighter over here on the bounce. That's what sets up a Head and Shoulders. And if you think about that from a supply and demand, what does that say? It says that there's a trap buyers up here, the supply is there, you don't get much volume, not buying volume on the way up, and then what does it do? It breaks back down, and that's how it forms. And so it's no different than the neoclassical from that perspective, although many people really don't respect the Edwards and McGee's concepts that they laid out with respect to these volumes, and it works different for different folks, but that was how they laid it out in their groundbreaking book back in 47 or whatever it was. Okay, so that's the GDX. Let me flip and take a couple questions, and then I'll come back to some other things. Let me see, what do we got here? Federico, my friend, should I pick up more HY? HY, we talked about this last week. This was Historiel, and they were coming into a big bar, and they got their undercut of this bar. They're going to bounce tomorrow. The problem here is the same problem you got everywhere, and is do you really believe we're going to get another V-shaped reversal? And I don't know. Can they do it again? I mean, it's been done so many times over the last 5 years, especially over the last year and a half. I can't even begin to count. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many V-shaped reversals I've seen. So I certainly don't rule it out. I just think that anything you're picking up today, you're flipping tomorrow the next day. I don't think you want to stick in stuff too long, or you want to flip at least some of it and book it. Yeah, this guy should bounce tomorrow. And if I remember right, the weekly was a pretty good chart. Let me pop in here again. Yeah, it was. So it's coming back in, doing a retest regen. Probably won't have volume. Yeah, I just think that you flip it, though. You make a little money off of it, you flip it, and then you watch to see what the rest of the market does. And when I say flip it, I'm not talking about you buy 100 shares and you flip all 100. Maybe you flip 80. You take some of the money, put it in your pocket, and then you carry the rest if you want. Or if you already have some, maybe you flip it. It's up to you. But I do think that you have to be careful here, because we're about to set up the structure. Well, today we set up the structure on the S&P to allow for a bigger break. We've already seen the NASDAQ and the NDX break. Those typically are the leaders. They let us up. They'll probably lead us down. When we're going to go down, it will be those guys leading, because they're much more about beta, and they're much more about growth stocks, and those are the ones that get hit first, and they get hit heavier and faster. And so, and on the way up, they're the ones that get bought the fastest. So, I always defer to those groups, small caps, tech, as the ones that are kind of the precursor as to what might be coming. Now, it doesn't mean because they were weak here that we're going, that we put in a top, so to speak. But we certainly could have. And so you have to respect the fact that it could be the case, right? And you don't carry a lot of inventory until you see enough evidence to suggest that that isn't the case. And you just don't have that now. Matter of fact, you have the opposite. And so you have to respect that and be careful about it. When would it be time to buy FNV? FNV is a gold stock. They're kind of a they actually finance mining companies. And so when the GDX gets hit, they're going to get hit just like anybody else. They also play in the oil sector in the same space, do the same thing. Pull it back, look at it on a weekly, on the FND. You're coming back. You remember we broke multiple swing point highs on the way up. We're deeper into this bar now. This is what we looked at the last time. It's deeper into the bar. When you get deeper into it, you can make it down even farther. So you're doing a retest regen right now on this stock. I expect that tomorrow or the next day these things will start to bounce again. But I don't know how far they're going to carry before they try to do some deeper stuff. I do not believe that gold's going to new lows and that it's going to continue the longer term trend, at least not yet. And so I suspect that we'll probably see another run out of these before it's over. So it's doing a retest regen. It can make it all the way back down to this lower area, which is in the 43, what is it, about 43 to about 43.60 or so. It's trading at 46. These stocks move big. I mean, it's already moved 53 to 46. It's dropped $7, 15% in 5 days. I mean, in 5 weeks. Actually, in 2 weeks, because it was at the highs 3 weeks ago. So, you can get big moves in these stocks very quickly and get hurt if you're not careful. If you're interested in the stock, you kind of start looking at it here and you start saying, okay, so you got the 43, say 43 roughly on the bottom side. 43.50 is here. So I would just go down and look at these big bars and say, okay, how do these things line up? Of course, the TA charts to line them up for you. So there's a nice little zone right there. It's not too far away. There's another one right above it, right here. That's the other one that you see here. And then you got another one right up here that it went into today. So you're right there at the spots. I think you start picking right in here. I wouldn't wait too much longer. Volume still pretty big, so you probably get, you'll probably get another price zone in here somewhere. So you don't have to rush into it, but if you're interested in the stock, you have to start picking somewhere. And I didn't pick on this one today, but I did pick on some others. Let's see here. What else we got? How about copper and FCX? I haven't looked at copper in a while. Let's see what it looks like, because it got decimated. Okay, so copper, I'm on a daily. It left a big high volume low. That's interesting. So this, you don't see this very often. So you got this big, spike, right? And then what does it do? It gets up underneath it, closes under it, and it's just wallowing around. And then all of a sudden you get another big spike, but the stupid thing closes up above it, right? And it had less volume. So that's like a reversal. So it looks to me like you kind of put in a bottom already for now. The problem is that this is the zone right now. And let me clean this up. The zone is here, right? You can see the top of resistance, the bottom support. That is the zone. And I expect you will see this trade in here for a while. I doubt you're going to see it pop out right quick. I mean, it may get slightly over it and then come back, but I think it's going to trade in this range for a few days. So to me, unless you're going to play that range, it's kind of dead money for a while. Let me see what the weekly looks like. Yeah. This is I wouldn't be trying to bite on this yet. So this one broke multiple swing point lows, right? Got the extension, and now it's just kind of hanging. It did do an under over. I do think you'll get a little bounce, but then you're going to retest again. So what you really want to do if you're interested in copper is you want to let it bounce, you want to let it fail, you want to let it come back down and test this area. That low is 35.36, and the other one is 34.89. So somewhere around 35. You want to look in that area. When it finally, gets its bounce and comes back and test, and if it holds there, then you got a shot at doing something on the upside. FCX would probably be the same scenario. It's not as badly hit. Yeah, this actually doesn't look too bad. So I would, if I'm interested in copper, I'd probably come over to this guy. Now they do gold too, so it's not just copper here. They got a nice big spike up, didn't they? But not as much as what they're coming into. So this one's going to trade back down again. Yeah, so this one's range bound for now here in this sort of a range. Looks like about right there. And I would be trying to look at it here coincident with what we just talked about on the JJC. So if the JJC tests back down into that area, right, and this is down in this area and you don't see any volume expansion down here, that would be your chance to try to grab something like this kind of a move, right, and get a nice spike out of there. All right, I'm running out of time here. I think I told you probably the majority of what I wanted to say. I was going to look at the foreign indexes, or the non-domestic, I hate calling them foreign, but the other indexes around the world indexes, but I'm not going to have time tonight. I would expect some sort of a bounce. We'll see what it looks like with the pressure that we've seen recently, Friday and now Monday. I would think that we get some sort of gyration now, and if we can't lift, and really if we don't see any kind of a good lift over the next 2, 3, 4 days, then we're going to see some continuation of the downside. That's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two, and if you're not a member, think about it. We got a great package here. Got a lot of good stuff, trading signals every day. There's a lot of stuff on here that are exclusive to all the members. You can get unlimited access to the tools and to the portfolio and everything that's available as a subscriber. Have a great night, folks. Take care of yourself. I will see you next time. Till then, I'm LA. This is and was your daily TA wrap. Good night, folks.